welcome to the show, John. How you doing?
Hey guys, how's it going?
It's great.
What's
Thanks
going
for having
on?
me.
Great to have you.
Congratulations on the announcement. Would you mind just giving us the high level announcement and even just like a little breakdown of Astronus and how you describe the company on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, of course. So today we had this very cool announcement. You can go check it out on Bloomberg and some other places. We announced a new satellite for Taiwan, and this is a special kind of dedicated satellite in a high orbit that is called geostationary orbit. So this is a very special orbit. It's been around for been around since the beginning of the space age, but essentially allows you to park a satellite over a country or a region of the world and provide continuous service with just that one satellite. Or oh wait, what the hell?
Oops. You look and sound good to us.
Sorry, my something glitched on my Zoom, but it's all good. You guys can hear me?
All good. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So you can provide this service with just one satellite, or in some cases, a couple of satellites parked up there, and essentially create this backbone in the sky.
Yeah.
And this is really important in a case like Taiwan, which I'm sure we'll get into. Yeah.
Sure. Can you give us a little history of the company? And because I know you launched satellites before, and I've heard about Alaska and a few other countries. What has the rollout been now that you're kind of in the commercialization stage of the company?
Yeah. So we started the company coming up on 9 years ago.
An overnight success.
Overnight success.
We love an overnight success on this show. Congratulations. We love to see it. Just a quick 9-year journey. Good job.
Honestly, incredible timeline.
Yeah, it's incredible.
I appreciate that. Yes. We did. Yeah, we just sprang into being with this, beautiful manufacturing.
You just snapped your fingers,
fully
basically.
Formed. It just,
fully formed.
It's
just manifested it.
Magically appeared. So we started the company actually to do this one thing, which I always like to joke, there are no pivots. We started with this exact thesis in mind, and then we just have been, grinding away, executing on that all the way through. But it is, do a next generation satellite design using all the latest small satellite technology, but in high orbits, which have a number of benefits and a number of use cases they're very different from, I'm sure, what you and your viewers have heard about in low Earth orbit. So constellations like Starlink and OneWeb and some others that are in low Earth orbit have a lot of advantages, and high orbits have their advantages as well, and that's for both commercial and military and defense applications, which we are also now charging ahead on. So we started the company, on some early commercial customers that we found, and now, fast forward today, we've signed contracts for more than 10 of these satellites commercially. We also have a number of U.S. government defense programs that are sort of in work as we speak. So there's a lot going on. But this was an important one for us. Yeah.
Can you talk about your neighbors in geostationary orbit? I saw on your site there's $15 billion worth of these satellites being sent up every single year. So there's other people. You talk about kind of like
what else is up there? Is it like the Hubble telescope? Like how high are we talking? Higher than the ISS? Like really explain it like we're 5. Explain it like we're venture capitalists, actually.
Yes. Yeah. No, for sure. So it is about 100 times farther away than low Earth orbit. It's about 1/10 of the way to the moon. And as you said, there's about $15 billion worth of these large satellites launched to geo and other high orbits every year. But historically, those have always been giant behemoth satellites that cost hundreds of millions on, really for the commercial side is in this like few hundred million range. And then on the military side, the satellites cost over $1 billion per satellite.
Wow.
Sometimes multiple billions per satellite. So we're talking huge satellites the size of like a double-decker London, big red London bus, that kind of size. And then they're really designed to do everything from, broadband communications. This is where all broadcast satellite television has always been from. And then there's some important national security missions up there as well. And so the 15 billion is total between commercial and military. But, it is a huge number. It's just like, it's one of these very big industries that isn't talked about a lot. And so we said, hey, there's nobody really taking a new approach here. Feels like we could go do something really interesting and perhaps quite valuable.
And talk about today's announcement and the significance of it. I imagine this is not the kind of partnership that you started working on in Q1. It's probably something that's been in the works for a really long time. Like what's even like the timeline to make something like this happen?
Do you have one-click checkout? Can Taiwan just go, please, just buy now?
Yes, exactly.
Buy now, pay later.
No, for sure. It is a longer sales cycle for $100 million plus deal, but obviously worth the effort. This is a commercial contract with a telco called Chunghwa Telecom. It's the largest telco in Taiwan. They have about a $30 billion market cap, 7 or 8 billion a year in annual revenue. So this is a big country, big company, right? It's like in that Fortune 500 class of company. And they, among other things, in addition to managing, operating the cell tower networks for Taiwan, they also manage the undersea cables for Taiwan. They also manage satellite connectivity for the government of Taiwan. So they have a big footprint there, as you would expect. And so working with them, going back, I don't know, at least a year, maybe closer to 18 months ago, on where this could be, this valuable asset for them. And then, sort of going through I would call it all the normal enterprise sales activities from there, right? You have to get together with our technical teams, with their technical teams, hash out exactly what the technical specifics are of the satellite and then the network around it. And then, of course, hammering out the business terms. So it is a big deal for us. And I think a big deal for Taiwan. This is something they very badly need, as I'm sure you guys, as I'm sure has not escaped your attention.
What does it actually take to get the satellite up to geostationary orbit? Assuming you guys are partnered with, SpaceX on the transport side, but what are all the different kind of steps? Is this
uniquely unlocked by SpaceX in dropping launch costs? I'd love to know kind of the general trend in mass to orbit and how that's enabling the business.
Oh, 100%. Yes. I mean, there's no question. When SpaceX came along and really dropped the launch costs in a big way with the Falcon 9, that enabled a whole array of just like new space opportunity. Most, like I said, we've seen most of that in low Earth orbit, but absolutely still the case for us in higher Earth orbit. I think the difference is it's a lot higher Earth orbit. The higher orbits, it's a lot harder to get to. So you have to have your own onboard propulsion. The rocket doesn't actually get you all the way there.
That's what I was getting at. Yeah.
Yeah. So in low Earth orbit, the rocket just drops you off where you want to be, and you deploy satellites, and there's satellites in low Earth orbit that have no propulsion, extra propulsion on board at all. They don't need it. We are quite the opposite. So you get dropped off in this transfer orbit, but it's really on us and any other satellite that goes to GEO to do the rest of the propulsion ourselves and get ourselves the rest of the way up to GEO. So that is where we had to really design the whole satellite system around this electric propulsion system. We use an ion thruster, very high performance, that allows us to, essentially have all the fuel on board that we need in the size of a couple tanks that are basically look like, a couple of scuba tanks, right? So it's like that size of tank, that much xenon gas, which is the propellant, and we can actually get all the rest of the way there up to GEO. So, between that and if there's sort of more recent technologies, I think what we're doing today just wouldn't have even been possible technically until, coming around the time we started the company 8-9 years ago, because you really had a few of these pieces coming together, including the electric propulsion. So it is a more challenging orbit to get to for sure.
Interesting. How did you get into this? I actually don't know your background before you started the company.
I'm an aerospace engineer. I'm a space guy. I've been a space guy since I was a kid. Did my degrees in aerospace engineering. Worked on some big satellite programs. Worked at a couple of the big defense contractors, which I will remain nameless for this. But suffice to say, learned that was, not what I wanted to do with the
Yeah.
rest of my life. I was working at the big defense primes, and seeing how they operate. I think there's also there's something there that we got to fix. We got to fix for the country, or we're going to be in serious trouble. So
Yeah.
no better way to do that than starting your own company.
Yeah, we talked to Ian Cinnamon over at Apex Space, and he was talking about building a satellite bus or a platform for low Earth orbit satellites, kind of almost acting as like a supply chain partner to speed up, delivery to low Earth orbit, like smaller companies that want to get going. You started the company so long ago. I imagine that thruster is in-house. You built all this. Are there any other partners other than SpaceX that have been helpful to you as you've built out, or what does the modern space economy and landscape of partners look like as someone's building a company like Astronis?
Oh, that's a great question. So true, a lot of these pieces were not in place when we started the company. But as these pieces come along, we absolutely take advantage of them. So that includes, more rockets coming online.
Sure.
Some of them have more what we call Delta V
Yep.
to get to the higher orbits. That also includes some of these transfer vehicles. So we call them, orbital transfer vehicles. So like Impulse Space,
Impulse. Yeah.
for example. No question as those things come online, we can take advantage of those and use that to really I mean, not to benefit us, but to benefit our customers, right?
Totally.
We can get a satellite there faster. They get faster time to market. They get the spacecraft and their service that much faster. If they if they come online and do the kinds of things that we're talking about, the orbital transfer vehicles, then we have more fuel on board, which means a longer life for the satellites. So a lot of these, there's a lot of great opportunity to come in and add pieces to the ecosystem for sure.
Are you expecting Starship to change the business? I know Starship's going to be able to dump out like way more mass in LEO, but does it also make getting to GEO easier because it's just a bigger rocket?
Well, it will. I believe it is heavily LEO optimized. So using it, we will most likely. It's not strictly necessary. We don't have to do this, but. We will most likely want to use one of these orbital transfer vehicles.
Sure.
And I think that's actually like part of the genesis of why Tom started Impulse Space was he saw this like this real need there. But it will result in lower launch costs, right? I mean, which just really benefits everyone. I think it's a huge it's going to be a huge boon to the industry, and I'm very much looking forward to it flying. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how a modern telecom company delivers internet? Because I imagine Chunghwa Telecom has cell phone towers and maybe some 5G stuff, and then also maybe now they have geo satellites and those plug into the rest of the system, or are they trying to specifically create like, we're going to sell you a separate product that's a satellite dish that will interface with this geo internet product, and it's like a completely different line. Just like, I have a Verizon plan on my iPhone. I also have a Starlink terminal for when I travel. They're two completely separate products and networks and bills. But how are the telecoms thinking about providing kind of a 360 experience to the customer?
Yeah, so for a telco, we are providing what we call trunking and backhaul, right? So trunking, exactly what you'd imagine, a giant pipe that allows them to bring, huge amounts of data from point A to point B. And then backhaul is, in their case, imagine you have cell towers out in remote areas, and those cell towers are acting like any normal cell tower, and to the end user, they don't know the difference, right? They're just their cell phone's connected to whatever cell tower they're the closest to. But if the cell tower is in a remote area, it doesn't make sense to run a fiber line to that cell tower. And so you need to do that backhaul link, that is connect that cell tower to the network through some other way. And satellites are a very advantageous way to do that, especially in certain cases. I think what we've seen with a lot of the telcos that we work with, like Chunghwa Telecom, is they really, they do see it as a very separate kind of need and product offering than what people might get at their homes with whether that be their terrestrial provider or a LEO provider like Starlink. What they are really looking for is dedicated capacity that is set aside for their exclusive use, and it's on these what we call SLAs, service level agreements, guaranteed uptimes, where they know it's there whether they are using it or not. It's just always guaranteed to be there for them. And then on top of that, you imagine you can just think about what what some of these customers, Fortune 500 customers might want in an enterprise grade offering. It's security. It's, a lot of the customization. So understanding exactly what the different endpoints of the network are, exactly what equipment is used, and, getting to work with us to pick that equipment if they have a preferred vendor for that networking equipment. And then really just having this insight and transparency into exactly what's happening on their network at any given moment. So among other things, they know where their data is going and where it's not going. They know, for example, that their citizens' internet traffic is not going up to a satellite and then landing in some other country outside of their control, where maybe they don't trust that country. They just don't know what's happening to that data. So that's where we've seen this need out in the market for a true enterprise grade offering that has this kind of all these aspects to it.
How do you think about scope creep when you're sending a multi-$100 million, $100 million satellite up into the air? Everybody in traditional software is familiar. You start building something or you start scoping something out, and you're like, oh, what if we added this button or this feature, things like that. I imagine there's a huge incentive to try to scale capabilities and offer a bunch of capabilities, but at the same time, like, you kind of needed to do
every
one
ounce
or two
matters.
Yeah, every ounce matters, and there's like one or two things that are critically important.
Totally.
For the sort of value of the product.
Totally. When the customer asks for something and they know that there's like $100 million contract there waiting, the sales guys always want to say yes. So, so you got to figure out ways to help them say yes to things without, as you said, giving into this like, giving into this temptation to just like customize everything. Yeah. So we have a standard satellite design. We have a few pieces to it that are essentially modular. So you can sort of plug and play a few different things like Lego blocks for slightly different customer configurations. But that's it, right? We draw the line there, and then there's only so much that we're willing to customize the design. And you have to, at some point you have to say no. Like, hey, if we were to totally customize this thing for you, the cost would balloon way beyond what you are, what you're willing to pay here. So I think that's worked well for us. We've sold, like I mentioned, a lot of satellites of this using that approach, and I think there's always ways to make it work.
Yeah, I love the meme of the
sales guy
just promised like a bunch of features,
dinner.
And the CTO
of course.
is saying, yeah, of course we can do that.
You want it to just be able to go up and back whenever you want, for sure. No
we'll make it happen.
Yeah. You want it to land on the moon and then come right back? Obviously.
Yeah, a little bit different. I guess I don't really know in enterprise software land, but I can imagine that it happens all the time, and it's like. Sometimes they just have to put up with it, but it's a little harder to like build a totally different satellite design, physical satellite hardware.
I totally get it.
Software features.
I totally get it. With software, it's like, okay, this engineering team is going to have to spend 2 days over the weekend, shipping this, but it just doesn't quite work the same when you're sending 9-figure payloads to space. Can you talk about security, kind of like risks in geostationary orbit versus low Earth orbit? Are you far enough away that it's like a maybe a more secure environment or less risk, or are the risks still kind of very real?
Yeah, so I'm going to be a little limited in what I can go into here, since I do have a security clearance. there are different threats to higher orbits and geostationary orbit than there are to low Earth orbit, and different counters to those threats. I think what I would say is that our plan is and what we're executing on is we're building many of these satellites. We're spooling up our production here in this building to build build and launch many dozens of these satellites, including we'll have on-orbit spares. We'll have satellites that we could bring in and add to add to the network or replace if a satellite was lost for whatever reason. And you actually imagine, I mean, that actually is an easier problem to solve than an undersea cable, fiber optic cable being cut.
Yeah.
That fiber optic cable is being cut. You just think about the difficulty to replace that. You have to actually get a ship to roll that out over. Oh, hold on.
Like thousands of miles, right? Somewhat related to that, but probably something you can talk about. In terms of space junk, we hear these stories about like, oh, the ISS had to dodge some satellite debris. Is that a problem for you? Do you have systems and thrusters that can turn on if you're detecting something, or is it clear enough that it's not really an issue at this point?
No, it's true. I mean, it occasionally it's much more rare in GEO than in LEO these days, but the orbital the orbital space like airspace, but space is being actively monitored at all times by the US military. They actually do this, your taxpayer dollars at work. They do this and broadcast to the entire world if they believe there could be a collision between two space objects. And they call it a conjunction event, and you get a conjunction warning. And you on board, like we do have thrusters on board, rocket thrusters that we could use to do these evasive maneuvers and get the satellite out of the way if we really believe there was a real risk of some kind of collision there. Like I said, quite rare in GEO. Certainly not unheard of, but rare for you to get one of those warnings. More common in LEO, but that is just becoming a reality in the space environment now. I mean, that's just a reality we're gonna have to all deal with.
Makes sense. Speaking of undersea cables, it's been 10 years working on this. Can you take me through what the next 10 years might look like? I know that a geostationary satellite is mostly, in the case of an island nation, mostly going to act as backhaul between cell phone towers on that country. But is there a future where instead of going through an undersea cable from an island in the Pacific to mainland America, you could actually do the backhaul in space between two geostationary or satellites? Is that something that's possible even, or I know it might not be as fast, but
that is the use of this Taiwan satellite today, actually.
Cool.
That we announced today.
That's right.
It will actually have a couple of different, it will be able to provide service on the island, but it will also be able to be a relay to locations off the island in the case that all their fiber lines are cut.
Wow.
And they would otherwise just be totally isolated from the outside world, right?
It seems really important.
That is very important. That is a very real concern. You can imagine if you were just getting your communications, piped in with these undersea cables, and then one day someone accidentally drags an anchor across, all of them. That you could end up very isolated and in fact completely unable to talk to the outside world. It's very scary.
That is very scary.
A very scary scenario for a country like that, right? And there are many such countries that have these concerns now. The world is a more complicated and I would say dangerous place than it was in the past. And so this is where we have seen a significant demand for this kind of service now.
Do you have any insight into how Taiwan and the Taiwanese government views civil military fusion? We've heard from Palmer Luckey that every boat that's built in China needs to be able to be built to military specs. Obviously, you're doing a commercial deal here, but how does Taiwan think about that? I feel like in America, if AT&T does a deal, the government's like, or the DoD is like, okay, cool, like, you know, that's kind of its own thing. Taiwan might have a different positioning, but what is your take on how the Taiwan government views civil military fusion?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, this is a commercial this is a commercial deal,
Yeah.
sure, and it is one of our commercial satellites coming off our commercial production line. I
Yeah.
think what I would say is that you know, where we've seen interest from the DoD,
Mm-hmm.
it is actually also for these same satellites off of that same production line. They are very interested in this dual use type of scenario where they actually get to benefit from all the private capital that we've raised. We've invested that into this production capability. So then, therefore, we're using it commercially. We're using produce, and then if we use that same production capability, to produce satellites for them, then they get a much lower price point than they would otherwise if it just like all this investment had to come in to stand up a whole new production line just for a military, a new line of military satellites. So that is where, right, that's the benefit of a dual use technology. Like they are
Yeah.
getting that benefit in a way they just wouldn't otherwise. And I think places like Taiwan, they saw the benefits from that also. They saw our U.S. military contracts. They know that we have designed something that the military is interested, not in some upgraded, super, turbocharged version of what we have today, but what we actually have today. And they're basically getting that same thing, right? So that is, maybe that's slightly a different way to look at it, but
No, that's fine.
there's definitely, we are definitely seeing a closer amount of overlap of our commercial industry and what the DoD is looking for than ever before, I think,
Yeah.
in the U.S., as I'm sure you guys are seeing with a lot of companies you're talking to.
For sure. I'm a big fan of the moon. I want to go to the moon. I want to be able to listen to podcasts on the moon. Are you going to be able to help with moon comms in the future?
100%, yes.
I love
We
it.
actually, yes, we have an early NASA study contract. We're studying that for NASA. NASA is going to need everything that we have like every space service we have for Earth. We're going to need another copy of that around the moon. The moon's going to need its own GPS.
Yeah.
Moon's going to need its own comms networks, both
Yeah.
moon to moon, lunar surface to lunar surface comms, as well as relays
Sure.
back to Earth. And then they're going to need all these transportation systems. I think with the moon, the most interesting story that nobody is talking about is we have a real space race with China happening as we speak, and it's very concrete. There is a series of craters on the moon that we know have water ice trapped in them, and these are permanently shadowed craters on the lunar South Pole. And it is extremely valuable real estate. Like that real estate and those mineral rights, if you want to call it that, enormously valuable because you can use that water to create rocket fuel, which you can use to then use have the moon be this stepping stone to other places in the solar system. And whoever gets there first and really decides we're not just going to plant a flag. We're going to put down a fence,
Base. Yeah.
and we're going to say this is our lunar property. Like whoever does that first, there's no reason to not believe they will just maintain that forever for all time, right? I mean, it's currently totally green field. Now, if all the nations on Earth agree to not do that, which they essentially did through international treaty, I'm sure the U.S. would abide by that. But if China decides to just flout that treaty and ignore it and just go land and start grabbing territory there, it would be incredibly dumb for us to let them charge ahead with that and miss out and let them get there first. So, and this is like, I mean, China just landed a new lunar sample return mission that allows them to demonstrate all the technologies needed to essentially do human missions, do other types of missions for all the things I'm talking about. And honestly, we haven't been talking about it enough because we're sort of letting China just go out and do all these things in space without even calling attention to it. I mean, I honestly, I think our new NASA administrator Jared Isaacman, who's going to be absolutely fantastic. I suspect he will talk about it once he gets in the seat. So we've been waiting for him to get Senate confirmed. I think you'll see other folks in the space industry start to talk about it because it's a big deal. Like we need to start getting,
serious
real,
about the moon. We got to
Yeah.
get serious about
Do you
the
think
moon.
in some way? Last question, then we'll let you go. Do you think in some way, calling this, the Space Force, kind of like allowed people to not take it at like it doesn't. In many ways, I think the name sounds cool, but I think a lot of people didn't feel like it was a super, serious initiative when it absolutely is something that, should be continued to be invested in massively and taken more seriously.
I mean, I think,
And I mean more like the broader social media reaction to like, great, we have a Space Force versus no, this is absolutely a new frontier of defense and warfare, and it should be taken more seriously than ever.
yeah, I mean, it's important to, keep in mind the Space Force in government terms, Space Force is still very new, right? It was, these things take a while to get established and also, essentially to really put forward their mandate. I also would argue that under the previous administration, things were a little muddled in exactly what their mandate would be. I think under the Trump administration, it's very clear. Their mandate is to counter the all of the activity and I would say aggression that we're seeing from China in space, and we're going to see them. I think we're going to see a lot more from Space Force in the near term here. So,
Great.
yeah, I think so I think stay tuned on that, and then, we will also. And I think we'll also see an increasing amount of coordination between our civil space community, NASA, and the Space Force than we had in the past. And again, that's going to go back. I take it back to what China's doing on the moon. They have no, not only do they have coordination. I mean, there's just no divisions at all between their military space, civil space, and even their commercial space. It's all just one big industry blob of activity that's we can't even draw lines there. So I think to counter that, we are going to see more cooperation there, and I think people will start taking it very seriously very soon.
Great. Well, thank you for starting the company 10 years ago, and for congratulations, congratulations on the milestone.
Yeah, kind of a right place, right time story, really. When I think about
10
it.
years in the
10
making.
years in the making. Anyway, this is fantastic.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much. We'll
All right,
have you
John.
back.
Congratulations
Really
to the whole
appreciate
team.
All right.
Cheers.
Have a good one.